Hi, my name is Marisol Quinn. I used to think that if life ever completely unraveled, if my job vanished, if my marriage crumbled, if I found myself staring at rock bottom, there would always be one door left open, a place I could return to, a light left on. That place was the old white house on Bellevue Hill in rural Vermont, where the porch creaked in rhythm with the wind and the kitchen always smelled like lemon polish and reheated coffee. My father's house, or at least it used to be. When I drove up that gravel road last March, 3 days after signing my divorce papers and 2 weeks after losing my job in Boston, I still believed that house would catch me. I still believed the people inside hadn't changed. That belief lasted all of 15 seconds. The driveway looked exactly as I remembered. Same mailbox hanging crooked on its post, same garden gnome leaning sideways under the lilac bush. I parked to the side, careful not to block the garage, an old habit that somehow felt polite, as if consideration might soften the intrusion. The porch light was off. Midday sun poured over the faded siding, catching the outline of my reflection in the front door window. I stood there with a small suitcase and a duffel bag, both lighter than the weight I carried in my chest. I knocked. Not because I had to. I still had a key somewhere in a drawer full of things from the life I no longer had, but because I didn't want to assume I still belonged. Delilah answered. Not Mom, not Del, just Delilah. Always Delilah. She opened the door halfway and gave me the kind of smile you offer a neighbor who shows up at the wrong house. Marisol, she said, like she'd been trying to remember my name. I wasn't expecting you. I forced a smile back. I know, I should have called. It's been rough lately. I gestured toward the bags, the tiredness in my voice louder than the words. I just need a place to land. A few weeks. Nothing permanent. Just until I figure things out. She didn't open the door any wider. Her eyes glanced behind me, then back. You're between homes again? The way she said again felt like a slap dressed as conversation. Just for a little while, I said. I'll find something. I just need a minute to breathe. There was a pause. Then, with no expression, she stepped aside. The house smelled like lemon polish and something colder, something sterilized. Everything looked the same. The old beige couch with the floral cushions, the porcelain rooster on the mantel, the framed family photos that stopped featuring me after I turned 25. Delilah motioned for me to sit, as if I were a guest. I did, perched at the edge of the couch. She brought tea, which she never used to do. Formal, measured, distant. I'm not asking for anything big, I said, wrapping my hands around the mug like it might warm more than my fingers. I'll be applying for jobs, even if it's part-time. I'll contribute when I can. I don't have anywhere else. She sat across from me, crossing her legs slowly like she was settling in for a contract negotiation. Then she said it. This house isn't a shelter, Marisol. I can't enable you. It wasn't anger I felt in that moment. It was erasure. I blinked. I'm not asking for anything permanent. I just need time to figure things out. She tilted her head slightly, and her voice was steady, dismissive. You've needed time for years. Time to recover. Time to grow up. Time to land on your feet. We've given you enough of it. We? I asked, though I already knew she was speaking for the family that still pretended I didn't need one. She set her mug down. You should stay somewhere that suits your situation better. This isn't that place anymore. 15 minutes later, I was back in my car. The tea had gone cold. So had I. I thought about calling Monica, my half-sister. She and I used to share bunk beds on weekends. I helped her sneak cookies from the kitchen and lied for her when she came home late during high school. When she had her first child, I babysat for free because that's what big sisters do, even when nobody else is paying attention. I called. She picked up on the third ring, her voice sweet and careful. Marisol, wow, I didn't expect to hear from you. Hi, Monday. I've had a rough stretch. I'm back in Vermont for a bit. I could use a place to crash, just for a few weeks." There was silence on the other end, then a laugh too light to be sincere. "Well, we'd love to help," she said, "but things are kind of tight. With the kids and the remodel and all, it would have to be under certain terms." "Terms?" I asked. "Nothing crazy," she assured me. "Just a contribution, to keep things fair." "How much?" "Nothing major, just maybe $2,800 a month, paid in advance." "For 6 months, Monica," I said slowly, "you want $16,800 from me to sleep in your guest room." "Well," she said brightly, "you'd have your own bathroom and it's a nice area. You know how things are these days. Family or not, boundaries are important." Boundaries. That's what they called it now. Boundaries when they locked the door. Boundaries when they priced you out of belonging. Boundaries when they let you fall and blamed you for not flying. I thanked her, hung up, and drove. Nowhere in particular. The road curled like a question mark through the woods. By dusk, I was standing in front of a shell, the charred ruins of the only house I ever owned, the one my father helped me buy before he died, the one I lost in the divorce settlement, then reacquired in a short sale, only to watch it go up in smoke 3 months later. The fire department called it accidental, old wiring, faulty outlet. But as I stood there, watching wind scatter black ash into the grass, I felt something colder than grief. I felt suspicion, because sometimes a house doesn't just burn down. Sometimes it's erased. And the people holding the matches? Sometimes they have your last name, and it's a nice area. The smell of burned wood still clung to the soil. It had been 3 months since the fire gutted the little craftsman house I called mine. And yet, standing in front of what was once my living room, I swore I could still hear the crackling. Not from flames, but from the quiet unraveling of something much older, something closer. The neighbors had already moved on. People leave casseroles, send texts, maybe even start a GoFundMe when tragedy hits. But they also move on. Fast. Except I couldn't. Not when something about that night refused to settle. I knelt beside the foundation, my boots crunched on gravel mixed with soot. I reached for a piece of charred siding, brittle and black, and turned it in my hand. A memory flashed. This wall used to hold my father's old bookshelf. He built it himself when I was 8. It held legal texts and framed family photos. Now it was dust. I kept staring. Something didn't add up. The fire report claimed faulty wiring, that it started in the kitchen. But I had upgraded the entire electric panel just last year, permitted, inspected, cleared, and I remembered unplugging everything that night before heading to Monica's for a weekend visit. So what was it really? And why, 3 days before the fire, had I gotten a letter from the city about a change in property tax records, redirected not to my address, but to Delilah's? I hadn't thought much of it at the time. The city was always making mistakes. But now, with the house gone and the land in legal limbo, I couldn't shake the question. Why was my stepmother getting mail about my home? I called Eli Sanders. Eli had worked at my father's law firm years ago, back when I was still fresh out of college, full of ambition and ignorance. He was the guy who remembered everyone's birthday, who brought donuts on Thursdays, who stayed late to make sure clients understood every dotted I in a contract. "Eli, it's Marisol," I said when he answered. "I need your help." He paused. "Marie? Wow, it's been, a decade?" "Too long," I said. "But this isn't a catch-up call." "I figured," he said. "You sound urgent." "I need to check the deed records from my old house, the one that burned down on Willow Creek Road. I'm not sure something's right." Another pause. Then, "I'll look into it. Come by the office tomorrow." Noon? The office looked almost exactly as I remembered, except now Eli had a corner desk and a law degree with his own name on it, hanging beside the window. He greeted me with a warm smile and a styrofoam cup of lukewarm coffee. "Still take it black?" he asked. "Still pretending that makes me stronger," I said. We sat. He pulled out a manila folder and slid it toward me. "The original deed lists you as sole owner," he said. "Purchased in 2018. But look here." He tapped the second sheet. "In November of last year, there's a transfer." "To who?" I asked, but I already knew. "Delilah Whitmore." My throat tightened. "That's impossible. I never signed anything." He nodded. "That's what I thought." So I pulled the transfer document. Look, he flipped the page. There it was, a signature in shaky ink that barely resembled mine. Witnessed by a notary I didn't recognize. Dated the same week I was hospitalized after a minor surgery. I'd been on heavy painkillers, barely able to drive, let alone sign legal papers. "Forgery?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Looks that way," Eli said. "We'll need more than suspicion to prove it. But here's the kicker." He pulled out another document. "This is a homeowner's insurance policy filed under Delilah's name. Effective date? 2 weeks before the fire." I stared at the page. The policy covered loss due to fire, vandalism, natural disaster. It listed her as the sole beneficiary. I felt the room tilt slightly, as if the walls themselves couldn't handle the weight of what I was hearing. "She insured my home," I whispered. "Then it burned down." Eli leaned forward. "That's what it looks like." I thought about the night I left for Monica's, the hallway light that flickered for the first time in months, the faint smell of gasoline near the garage that I'd brushed off as nothing. I hadn't burned the house, but someone wanted it gone. Someone wanted the land. That night, I drove to the corner of Willow Creek and Laurel Street. There was a diner with security cameras facing the block. I walked in, ordered the cheapest coffee they had, and made small talk with the cashier. "Busy neighborhood," I said casually. "A lot of late-night foot traffic." She shrugged. "Sometimes people walk their dogs, kids sneak out, nothing major." "Do those cameras record?" She looked at me with mild suspicion. "You at the insurance company?" "No," I said. "Just trying to figure out what happened the night of the fire. That was my house." Her expression softened. "Oh, honey, that was your place? I'm sorry." I smiled faintly. "Do you think I could see the footage from that night?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Let me ask the manager." An hour later, I was watching grainy footage from 2 nights before the fire. Around 2:12 a.m., a dark figure moved across the street. Hoodie, gloves, a canister in one hand. At 2:15, they disappeared behind my property line. At 2:28, a flicker of light. At 2:34, smoke. I asked to take a copy. The manager agreed, after I promised to keep their name out of it. Back in my car, I re-watched the footage. Pause, enhance, frame by frame. There, a glint, a piece of jewelry catching light near the wrist. I froze the frame. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just a watch. It was a silver charm bracelet. The same one I gave Monica for her 18th birthday, the same one she always wore. I sat there for a long time, watching the screen, watching my sister walk out of the dark and into the smoke, not away from it, into it. She hadn't just priced me out of her guest room, she'd priced me out of my own life. I used to believe the truth had a sound, a bell, a bang, some dramatic moment where the universe pointed and said, "There, that's what's real." But as it turns out, the truth is often paper, crinkled, stamped, misfiled, forgotten. And if you know where to look, it doesn't scream, it whispers. The morning after watching Monica walk through the smoke on that security footage, I woke before dawn, adrenaline still burning in my bloodstream, the kind of burn you get when grief starts turning into something sharper. Resolve. I didn't have money, I didn't have a home, but I had questions, and questions were free. I returned to Eli's office, this time with 2 coffees and the kind of determination that made him sit up straighter before I even spoke. I need everything, I told him. Every transaction, every form, every transfer, anything Delilah or Monica ever touched that has my name on it, or used to. He blinked, then nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. We started with the deed again. Eli pulled the records from the town clerk's office, then cross-referenced them with insurance documents, tax records, and notary logs. And slowly, a timeline began to form. One that no longer centered around the fire, but everything that came before it. August 14th. I signed the refinancing documents for my mortgage after my ex-husband defaulted on payments. I was the sole borrower. Eli had notarized it himself. September 3rd. A change of address request was submitted to the county office, rerouting all official mail to Delilah's P.O. box. I never authorized that. October 1st, a quitclaim deed was filed, supposedly signed by me, transferring the property to Delilah as a gift. No witness, no in-person verification. The notary? A woman named Jennifer Caro who, according to her own business website, was on maternity leave the entire month of October. Forgery. October 19th. Delilah applied for homeowner's insurance with a $250,000 fire loss policy. It was approved in less than 48 hours. November 2nd, the fire. The house burned between 2:30 and 3:10 a.m. No reported injuries, no witnesses. Investigation closed within a week. Delilah filed her claim 5 days later. The payout was still pending, but not for long. I stared at the timeline Eli printed and laid across the desk like an autopsy report. They hadn't just stolen my home, they'd orchestrated it. Paper by paper, signature by signature, falsehood by falsehood. I don't understand why, I said quietly. I had nothing they needed. Eli looked at me for a long moment. It's not always about what people need, Mari. Sometimes it's about what they think they deserve. I drove straight to the town hall that afternoon. The building was small, wood-paneled, and still smelled like pencil shavings and aging file folders. I asked for the records clerk, a polite man in his 60s named Harold. He remembered my father. Henry Quinn was a straight shooter, Harold said, thumbing through a drawer behind the counter. Used to bring us donuts every month when he came in to file reports. He believed in leaving a clean paper trail, I said. I guess I'm trying to follow it now. Harold chuckled. Well, you picked a hell of a mess to untangle. He handed me a stack of property transfer forms, public notices, and affidavits, including one from Delilah stating that I had relinquished interest in the property voluntarily due to emotional duress. I almost laughed. I'd never even seen this affidavit, but there it was when filed, dated, signed, my name, my forged name. Do you keep the original copies here? I asked. Harold shook his head. Those go to the county archives. Unless someone contests them, we just keep duplicates. I leaned in. What if someone did contest them? His eyes met mine. Then we'd have to start an investigation. I left with copies of everything I could legally carry and drove to the county archive building. It was 2 towns over, tucked behind an old courthouse and guarded by a receptionist named Lillian, who wore her hair in a tight bun and her sarcasm tighter. You want to see original property transfers? She asked. Yes, I said. For the house on Willow Creek Road. Owner name, Marisol Quinn, then Delilah Whitmore. She looked me over, then asked, You're that Quinn? I tensed. Depends on what that means. The house fire, she said. My cousin lives near there. Said it went up like dry leaves. It did, I said. She squinted, then motioned toward a back room. Down the hall, last cabinet on the right. You have 1 hour. The cabinet creaked open like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside, brown folders, red string ties, yellowing pages. And in one folder, dated October 1st, I found it. The original deed transfer. Delilah's name typed cleanly, my name scribbled, not in my handwriting, and beside it, the notary's seal. But something was wrong. The seal wasn't pressed. It was printed. Flat, fake, like someone photocopied a notary stamp from a website. I held the paper up to the light. No indentation, no emboss, no ink bleed, just surface. A Hammesit Vani, filed, accepted, unquestioned. I drove to Ivy Hale's office that evening. She was the one lawyer in town whose name still carried weight, and whose sense of justice hadn't been dulled by years of compromise. She opened the door herself, eyes sharp behind reading glasses. "You look like hell," she said gently. "Good," I said. "I'm right where I belong." I handed her the folder. She flipped through it slowly, page by page, until her lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't a civil matter anymore," she said. "This is criminal." As Ivy began drafting motions, my phone buzzed. It was Monica. I stared at the name. Part of me wanted to let it ring. Another part, the part that still hoped, answered. "Marisol," she said, voice tight, "we need to talk." "You're right," I replied, heart beating steady now. "We do." She hesitated. "You've been digging." I didn't deny it. She continued. "You don't understand the full picture." "No," I said, "but I've got enough of it to know you're in the frame." Silence. Then, "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No," I said, calmer than I expected. "You already did that when you lit the match." There's a moment, right before you strike a match, where everything is still, silent, weightless, all potential, no consequence. But once it ignites, there's no turning back. I used to think Monica was just wearing a mask. That somewhere underneath the polished words and sugar-coated manipulation, there was still the little sister I once braided hair for, the girl who cried when her goldfish died, the teenager who used to crawl into my bed after bad dreams. But I was wrong. Monica wasn't wearing a mask. The mask was who she really was. Ivy Hale moved quickly. She had a reputation for being relentless, and within 48 hours, she had filed an injunction to freeze the insurance payout Delilah was expecting. The motion included a preliminary fraud investigation, suspicion of forged legal documents, a request for restraining orders, a subpoena for digital communications between Monica and Delilah. While Ivy worked behind the scenes, I began preparing for war in the only way I could, by telling the truth. I returned to the diner with the security footage and asked the manager if he'd be willing to speak with Ivy. He agreed, anonymously. Then I reached out to Jennifer Caro, the notary whose stamp had allegedly appeared on my forged deed. She answered her phone on the second ring. "Hi, Jennifer. My name is Marisol Quinn. I believe someone used your notary information without your knowledge." There was a pause. Then she asked, "Is this about the Whitmore property transfer?" My stomach dropped. "Yes. I saw that go through a few months back. Someone tagged me in the local Facebook thread, said I'd notarized it, but I was on maternity leave and I definitely didn't meet anyone named Marisol. Would you be willing to sign a statement?" "I already did," she said. "Sent it to the clerk's office last week. It felt wrong. I've been waiting for someone to care." "Oh," I said, quietly stunned. "I care." That same day, Ivy forwarded me an email she'd received from the local news station. Subject line, RE, Inquiry into Willow Creek Fire and Insurance Fraud Allegation. Apparently, someone had leaked the injunction paperwork. Within hours, my name was back in town circulation, only this time not as the cautionary tale, the girl who burned out. Now I was the woman fighting back, and not everyone liked that. Around 6:30 that night, I got a text from an unknown number. "You think this will bring your father back? He left that house to Delilah for a reason. You're just mad you weren't enough to keep it." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because what they didn't understand was that I wasn't fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for the version of me they tried to erase. 3 days later, Ivy and I stood in the county courthouse. Delilah arrived first, dressed in black like she was attending a funeral. Mine, maybe. She didn't look at me. Monica came 10 minutes later in heels too high for a courtroom and a smile too bright for a woman under legal review. When she saw me, she tilted her head as if amused. "You look tired," she said. "You look rehearsed," I replied. She smirked. "This won't end the way you think it will." "You're right," I said, stepping past her. "It'll end in court instead of a cemetery. That's an upgrade." The judge reviewed Ivy's filings, asked a few questions, and then granted a temporary hold on the insurance funds. It wasn't a win, not yet, but it was a crack in their wall, and cracks grow. After the hearing, Monica caught up to me in the parking lot. No cameras, no judge, just two sisters under a dim sky. "You know you can still walk away," she said. "There's no money left in this for you. Even if you win, you'll lose. People forget that." I stared at her. "Is that what you told yourself when you lit the match?" Her eyes narrowed. "You're so dramatic." "Tell me something, Monica. When did it stop being enough to just hate me? When did it turn into this?" She didn't answer, because truthfully, I think she didn't know either. Back at the motel, I laid everything out on the bed. The paperwork, the photos, the statements. I organized every email, every timestamp, every misstep they made. And then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I opened the voice recorder on my phone, and I started to talk. "My name is Marisol Quinn," I said softly. "I'm recording this so that when people ask what happened, they hear it from me. Not the gossip, not the fire report, not the headlines. Me." I talked for over an hour. About my father, about the home, about the paper trail and the smoke and the sister who stepped into it. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I just told the truth. And it felt like breathing again. The next morning, Ivy called. "You need to come in," she said. "We got something." When I arrived, she had an envelope on her desk. It was a copy of a private email chain between Monica and Delilah, obtained legally through the subpoena Ivy filed. The subject line, "Plan Timeline." The content? A bulleted breakdown of what to do before, during, and after the fire. References to backdating documents, mentions of Jennifer Caro, and this: if she pushes back, she'll look unstable. Just keep calling it a mental health spiral. Let the smoke do the rest. My hands trembled. The match had a plan. The mask had a script. And now I had proof. By the end of the week, Ivy had filed for full criminal investigation. Fraud, arson, attempted insurance theft, all of it. And I walked into the storm with my head up. Because the thing about fire is, once it burns away what's false, you can finally see what's real. The courtroom smelled like cold air and old wood. Not fear, not anger, just the silence of a place that had heard too many truths denied and too many lies rehearsed. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Ivy Hale, a stack of neatly labeled folders in front of me like weapons. Paper ones, but sharp nonetheless. Across the aisle sat Monica and Delilah. Delilah wore pearls. Monica wore a smirk. Neither of them looked nervous. They should have been. The judge entered. Gray suit, steady steps, eyes like iron. He adjusted his glasses and glanced down at the file bearing my name. "Ms. Quinn, Ms. Hale," he began, "I understand you're alleging property fraud, forgery, and attempted insurance fraud against Ms. Whitmore and Ms. Monica Whitmore. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Ivy replied, "and we have the documentation to support each claim." "Proceed." We began with the deed. Ivy walked the court through the timeline. How I legally owned the house. How a transfer appeared during my post-surgery recovery. How the notary had been on maternity leave. Jennifer Caro had submitted a sworn affidavit. She even appeared via video, baby asleep on her chest, confirming she had never signed or witnessed my deed transfer. Then came the insurance records. Delilah's policy was dated just 2 weeks before the fire, with a suspiciously high valuation and no documentation of property inspection. Next, the surveillance footage. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as Ivy played the grainy black and white video from the diner camera. The figure in a hoodie, moving across the street, entering my yard. Frame by frame, we showed the bracelet, that tiny flash of silver near the wrist. Ivy paused. "Ms. Quinn, could you identify this item?" I leaned into the microphone. "Yes, it's a charm bracelet. I gave it to Monica on her 18th birthday." Ivy turned to the judge. "We will provide social media photographs, timestamps, and posts that confirm Ms. Monica Whitmore was wearing the same bracelet on the night in question." The silence in the room wasn't just stillness. It was shift, weight moving, balance tipping. When it was Monica's turn to testify, her confidence cracked. She sat upright, hands clasped in front of her, voice syrupy smooth. "I never forged anything," she said. "The transfer was real. Marisol was unstable. She wanted to give the house to Delilah. She even said it." "Do you have proof of that?" the judge asked. "Well, no, but she's always been dramatic. She lost her job. Her marriage failed. She had a history of mental distress." Ivy didn't flinch. "Your Honor," she said, "we have a signed letter from Ms. Quinn's therapist confirming that while she sought short-term counseling following her divorce, there was never any diagnosis of instability or diminished capacity." Monica's face stiffened. "And the video?" the judge asked. "The bracelet?" "It's a common design," she said quickly. "Lots of people have one like it." Ivy leaned in. "Would you be willing to show us yours today?" Monica hesitated. "I didn't wear it." "Why?" "No reason." And just like that, her defense faltered. Delilah didn't speak, not once. Her lawyer made statements, raised objections, asked for continuances. But Delilah just sat there staring straight ahead, eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. Shame, maybe. Or defiance. Or the weight of getting caught. At one point, during a recess, I stepped into the hallway alone. Monica followed. "You really want to burn this all down?" she whispered. I turned. "No, Monica. That's what you wanted. I'm just sifting through the ashes." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you think this gets you? A house? Some moral victory?" I shook my head. "It gets me my name back. My voice, my story. You don't get to rewrite me." "I never hated you," she said suddenly. "I just wanted my share." "You had it," I said. "You had love, family, a home. You just didn't want to share it." Back in the courtroom, Ivy brought out the email thread, the one labeled Plan Timeline. The judge read silently, page after page, then looked up at Delilah. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, "do you deny the content of these emails?" Her lawyer tried to interrupt. The judge raised a hand. "I'm asking your client." Delilah blinked. Her voice, at barely above a whisper, said, "No." "No, you don't deny it?" the judge asked. "No," she repeated. "I don't." It was the first honest thing I'd heard her say in years. By the end of the day, the judge issued his ruling. The deed transfer was declared fraudulent and reversed. Delilah was ordered to return the insurance funds. A criminal investigation was formally opened. Monica's role would be evaluated for conspiracy, obstruction, and perjury. And my name, Marisol Quinn, was restored as the legal owner of 224 Willow Creek Road. The house was gone. But what it stood for, that had just been reclaimed. Outside the courthouse, Ivy smiled at me for the first time all day. "You did it." I exhaled. "We did." She handed me a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" I asked. "An offer," she said, "to help you file a civil suit if you want to go further." I looked at the courthouse steps behind me. "Maybe," I said, "but not today." That night, I sat in a rented trailer 2 towns over, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea I'd bought with the last $5 I had on a gift card. I scrolled through my phone and played back the voice recording I made a week earlier, and when it ended, I added one last line. "They tried to burn me out, but in the fire they revealed themselves, and in the rubble, I found me again." You can lose a house in 23 minutes. That's how long it took from the first lick of fire to the final collapse, according to the fire department's report. You can lose trust in the space of a glance, a forged signature, a silence held too long. But there are some things people can't take, no matter how hard they try. Your voice, your truth, your ability to rise. It had been 6 weeks since the judge's ruling, 6 weeks since my name was restored on paper. But legal justice is a strange thing. It gives you facts, not peace. The land was mine again. The insurance payout had been frozen. Delilah and Monica were now wrapped in red tape and ongoing investigation. And yet, each morning, I woke up in the small rented trailer behind the old feed store on Route 12. I had to remind myself, you're not the victim anymore. You're the one who came through the fire standing. The first thing I did with that truth was visit the property. It was the first time I allowed myself to walk the land since the hearing. The house was gone, but the lot still held memories. The stones that once lined the garden path, the warped mailbox that still carried my last name in faded lettering, a single charred beam still poking from the dirt like a broken spine. I sat on the back steps, what was left of them, and let the wind talk. No screaming, no courtroom silence, just air and trees and the occasional rustle of dry leaves against gravel. And I remembered something my father once said, Marisol, people will try to take everything you build, but they can't take the way you build it. That's yours. So I began again, not with bricks and lumber, not yet, but with something stronger, service. I started by volunteering at the local food pantry. It wasn't glamorous, stocking shelves, checking expiration dates, unloading trucks, but it gave me a rhythm, a purpose. Some days I'd see women I went to high school with. They'd glance at me, tilt their heads, whisper behind hands. Wasn't that Marisol Quinn? Didn't her house? Wasn't her sister? Let them talk. I had nothing left to hide and everything to live for. One afternoon, while restocking cereal boxes, a woman about my age approached me. Her eyes were soft, tired. "Are you," she started, voice low, "the woman from the fire?" I didn't flinch. "I am." She nodded. "I just wanted to say thank you." I blinked. "For what?" "You made me file a restraining order," she said. "Been thinking about it for months, but after reading about your story, I thought, if she can face her family in court, I can face my ex." She smiled gently. "You reminded me I don't have to stay quiet." And just like that, I knew. The house may have burned, but the truth had sparked something else. Ivy called me a week later. "You're not going to like this," she warned. "Great," I sighed. "Hit me." "They're negotiating plea deals." "Both of them?" "Looks that way. Delilah's willing to admit to insurance fraud. Monica's still dancing around conspiracy charges, but the emails are hard to explain away." "Will they go to jail?" "Maybe. Probably not for long." I let out a breath. "It's not fair," I said. "It's not," Ivy agreed, "but it's something." "Do I have to be there?" Not unless you want to testify again." "I don't want to look at them," I said. "Not anymore." "Then don't," she said simply. "Let the law finish its part. You already did yours." I spent the next few days driving around Vermont, not aimlessly, but with quiet intention. I stopped at a little used bookstore in Montpelier, at a garden shop in Bar, at the edge of Lake Champlain, where I skipped stones like I did as a kid. And with every stop, I asked myself one question. What does rebuilding look like if you don't want to build the same thing again? A week later, I drove back to the property, and this time, I wasn't alone. 3 volunteers from the food pantry came with me. One brought gloves, another brought rakes, the third brought hot coffee. Together, we cleared debris, not all of it, but enough to see the ground. I planted a small wooden sign in the soil where the porch once stood. It read, "Something honest begins here." I didn't need a house. Not yet. What I needed was a space that meant something new. So I applied for a local grant, one designed for small community spaces, and I proposed this, a healing garden, for women who had been erased, silenced, ignored, a place where truth could grow again, literally and figuratively. To my surprise, they approved it. $12,000, enough for fencing, raised beds, benches, a small shed. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. Delilah never contacted me again. Monica sent a letter, 4 sentences long. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted a piece of something for myself. I'm sorry. I hope someday you can forgive me. I never wrote back. Forgiveness isn't something you give in response to guilt. It's something you build when you're ready to let go of carrying the damage. And I was getting there. Day by day, seed by seed. That fall, I held the first gathering in the garden. 10 women came. Some brought muffins, one brought a poem, another brought silence, and we let her keep it. We talked. Not about courtrooms or crimes, but about continuing, about what they couldn't take. And when I stood at the center of the space and read aloud from the journal I kept through everything, I felt something settle inside me. Not closure, clarity. I no longer needed revenge. What I needed, what I chose, was reclamation of land, of truth, of me. And no fire, no forged paper, no whispered lie could touch that now. There's a sound you start to recognize once the noise dies down. It's not applause. It's not forgiveness. It's not even justice. It's your own voice coming back to you. Quiet at first, then stronger, then unshakable. And that's when you realize they didn't destroy you. They just cleared the way for you to speak louder. It was nearly winter by the time the garden was fully finished. We called it the Rooted Place, a soft name for something that came from ash and ruin. There were benches now under a canopy of cedar beams, raised beds filled with winter herbs, a path of stone that curved gently through it all, laid by hands that had once trembled. Mine. There was no plaque, no monument, just a small wooden sign at the gate that read, "You were never too much." They were just not enough. I still lived in the trailer, still worked at the pantry, still owned a plot of land where a house once stood. But the part of me that once wanted it all back, the rooms, the walls, the proof that I belonged, didn't need those things anymore. Because the truth is, you don't need 4 walls to know you're standing on solid ground. You just need your own 2 feet and the courage to plant them. One evening, Ivy called. "Plea deals finalized," she said. "Time served?" "Yes. Some restitution. No jail." I exhaled. Not out of relief, more out of confirmation. They wouldn't go behind bars, but they would be on record. Their names tied forever to the truth. Delilah lost her insurance license. Monica lost her career in real estate, and both of them lost something they never expected to, the right to my silence. I received another letter from Monica a few weeks later. It was longer this time, handwritten, tear-stained possibly, but who knows? Maybe it was just coffee. She said she was in therapy, said she'd replayed the moment she walked through the smoke 100 times, said she didn't recognize herself anymore. I folded the letter and placed it in a box marked "Not Mine to Carry," because healing doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means release. I was asked to speak at a local women's group not long after. A friend from the pantry had recommended me. "We don't need a keynote," she said, "just someone who's walked through something real." So I stood on a modest stage in a community center that smelled like dust and determination. No microphone, no slides, just me. And I said, "My name is Marisol Quinn." And for a long time, I believed my story ended in silence, in smoke, in loss. But here's what I learned. Fire doesn't just destroy, it reveals. It shows you who ran, who stayed, and most of all, who you really are when everything else is gone. I lost my home. I lost people I once called family. I lost trust, security, certainty. But I found my voice, and I used it, even when it shook, even when they told me I was too much, too late, too loud. And now I plant things. I plant hope. I plant stories. I plant the belief that no one has the right to write you out of your own life. So if someone tried to burn your story down, if someone told you your voice didn't matter, I want you to know this: the fire can't touch your truth. The smoke can't cloud your worth. And when the embers settle, you'll still be standing. Afterward, a woman in the audience approached me. She looked to be in her 60s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen things they weren't supposed to. She held my hand and said, "I waited 30 years to say what you just said in 20 minutes. I squeezed her hand back. "Say it now," I told her. "Say it loud. I'll be here to listen." I don't know what's next. I don't know if I'll rebuild a house, if I'll move away, if I'll fall in love again or live alone and content. But I do know this: I own more now, with less than I ever did when the house was still standing. I own my name, my choices, my quiet mornings, my loud stories, and no one, no judge, no sister, no flame can take that from me again. Sometimes people ask me if I ever hear from Delilah. I don't, and that's fine. Some ghosts don't haunt you because they hate you. They haunt you because they can't stand that you survived. And I did, not perfectly, but honestly. As I write this, it's snowing over the rooted place. The herbs are tucked beneath frost. The benches sit empty, waiting for spring. And I am here, whole, wounded, and wildly, deeply, undeniably mine. This wasn't a story of revenge. It was a story of reclaiming, without shouting, of finding truth when everyone else covered it in smoke. If you've ever been written out, overlooked, or made to doubt your own memory, let Marisol's journey remind you: you don't need permission to stand your ground. You don't need approval to speak your truth. And dignity, real dignity, is never something anyone else can give or take. Thank you for watching. If this story touched something in you, please like, share, and subscribe, and always remember, your voice matters, and your story is still yours to tell.